So the X5 is Insta360's flagship camera. While on the other hand, you've got the recently released Insta360 GO Ultra, which is arguably the smallest camera in the Insta360 lineup. But interestingly, you've probably noticed there's not actually a huge price difference between the two. Depending on sales and where you live in the world, there's probably only an $80 to $180 difference between the two cameras. So which one should you buy? I've tested out both and compared them head to head to help you decide, and honestly, the results might surprise you. And just so you know, this video is completely unsponsored. All of my gear reviews are honestly all of my own thoughts. So first off, let's talk about the image quality, because that's obviously one of the most important things to consider when you're buying a camera. And what I expected was that the X5 would honestly dominate. This is the flagship camera. It films up to 8K in resolution. It's got higher bitrate. It's got a bigger sensor. Everything on paper points to the fact that this should have better image quality than the Ultra. However, when I actually did side-by-side tests, so I actually rigged up these two cameras next to each other and went out and filmed, when I matched the shots in post, the Ultra came out looking better every single time. As you can see from these shots, everything looks sharper, it's clearer, there's more dynamic range. And this applied no matter which mode I was in, both in 8K on the X5, and then when I bumped down to 5.7K HDR on the X5, it looked even worse. However, there is one huge caveat. In order to match the field of view on the GO Ultra, I had to zoom and crop on the X5 footage. And so naturally this meant that I lost a lot of resolution and a lot of detail. However, when I exported footage at a more native field of view from the X5, in my view, the footage looks just as good, if not better than the GO Ultra, with colors looking really natural, really bright and vibrant. And especially in the 8K mode, everything looks really sharp and really crisp, and also not over sharpened, which I really like. Now for me, this really starts to get at kind of the key difference between these two cameras. And that is kind of the obvious thing, that the X5 is a 360-degree camera, while the Ultra is more of a standard single point of view camera. And so what this means in practice is that the X5 is constantly having to expose for the entire environment, which is a lot harder to do. Whereas with the Ultra, it's only exposing for where you're pointing it. So if you're pointing it at a bright light source, it's going to expose for that. Whereas if you point it at shadows, it's going to expose for the shadows. Whereas with the X5, it has to expose for everything all at once. And in my experience, I would say that when you factor this in, I think the X5 actually does perform better. You also have to consider the fact that even when you're in 8K mode, if you're cropping in on an 8K resolution image that's a full 360-degree view, you're going to lose resolution fast. So it's really hard to compare the image quality side by side in that regard, because while with the GO Ultra you're getting 4K in a single specific field of view, on the X5 you're splitting 8K across two sensors that are getting a full 360-degree field of view. All that to say, really, at the end of the day, I think generally speaking, you're going to get better looking images from the X5, but it will be a wider field of view. If you want a more standard field of view and you're okay with a slightly lower image quality in general, then the GO Ultra will do the job. Once again, this kind of hints at a broader difference between the two cameras, which I'll get more into as we go through the video. So the next thing I wanted to talk about briefly is the size and portability of the two cameras. So the X5 is the biggest camera in the Insta360 lineup, and the GO Ultra outside of the action pod would be less than a third of the size of the X5. Now to me, that doesn't mean that the X5 isn't portable, because it really is. I can still definitely pocket the X5 as well as the GO Ultra. But I think the thing you have to remember with portability with the two cameras is that the X5 really needs to be used on a selfie stick. You have to kind of have it away from your body to get the best images from it. If you have it too close to yourself, you're going to get a lot of distortion and warping. So you kind of have to factor in carrying around a selfie stick with you on top of the X5. With the Ultra, because it's so compact and it's more of a standard camera, you can get away with filming without any sort of selfie stick or tripod. And so I would say this is more truly pocketable than the X5. You can also film quite easily just holding it at arm's length, and you can get some really good results with it. But of course, you can also attach all of the standard accessories with a quick release mount on the bottom, including selfie sticks and tripods. So I think in that regard, the Ultra probably wins the portability battle. So let's move on to the battery life. Now this one to me has a pretty clear winner out of the gate, and that is the X5. And that's primarily because it's got a removable battery. And that's despite the fact that with the standard battery on the X5, you actually get less record time. So shooting in 5.7K 30, the battery is rated for 135 minutes, while you're supposed to be able to shoot for 170 minutes inside the action pod in 4K on the Ultra. However, the big benefit of having a removable battery is that you can have multiple batteries that are fully charged, ready to swap straight in. While on the Ultra, it's a fixed internal battery. So if you want to charge it, you're going to have to plug it in via USB-C. On top of that, Insta360 also released an extended life battery for the X5 called the Ultra battery, which is kind of confusing. But with this extended battery, you can get up to 235 minutes of record time. So just that battery alone is going to beat the performance of the Ultra. So I think if you're going to go on longer shoots, going traveling with the X5, and you can get your hands on a second battery or the extended battery, then that to me is why the X5 wins the battery battle. Now let's talk about the next part, which is also a pretty key difference, and that is workflow. So when it comes to shooting, this is probably the biggest difference between these two cameras. So with the Ultra, you really have to be quite intentional about the shot that you're getting because it's a single fixed point of view. It's much more like a standard camera in that regard. So if I want to be filming myself, I actually have to turn the camera to myself, make sure I'm getting a good angle by looking at the preview screen. And then as I'm filming, I just have to constantly quickly check to make sure I'm still filming myself and that I've got the angle pointing in the right direction. And this is totally fine. Like generally, this is how you would film with most cameras, whether it's a huge mirrorless camera, a cinema camera, point and shoot, whatever it is, that's the standard way you would film. The biggest benefit to this is that it really forces you to actually think about your shot while you're filming it. And this can maximize your creative results. So you have to really think about your framing while you're shooting, make sure it looks good, make sure you've got your exposure right, all those sorts of things to help you get a good shot in camera so that there's minimal work to do in post when you take it to your computer. Now, the negative of this is that it's going to take you out of the moment to some degree. Depending on what you're doing, you have to spend some mental energy thinking about your shot, thinking about your framing, making sure it looks good while you're actually doing the filming. And again, this could really suit you if you really enjoy the process of filming, if you like getting good shots. But if you're doing something a bit more action oriented, where you really prefer to be in the moment and you don't want to have to think too much about capturing footage, this could be a bit of a distraction. And that is really the strength of the X5 because you really just don't have to think about it when you're filming with it. The only thing you really have to spend mental energy on is thinking about the height of the camera. So generally I find holding it at about eye level when I'm trying to film myself is ideal. So as long as I'm keeping it roughly about eye level, I know that I'm safe and it's filming everything because I can then go back later in post and reframe it to look at whatever I want. And this is honestly the biggest strength of 360 cameras in general, in my opinion. Even more than the creativity you can get with these cameras, it's the fact that you don't have to think about it when you're filming with them. You can basically just hold it on a selfie stick, make sure you don't hit anyone with the stick, and just do whatever you're doing, and you're pretty much guaranteed to get some really good looking shots. For example, for me, when I'm out skateboarding, the X5 is the go-to camera that I'll always use. Because electric skateboarding in particular is something that carries inherent risk because you're traveling at high speed, I don't want the distraction of having to think about my framing while I'm skating. So just being able to hold out a selfie stick and really not think about it is amazing. Now, the big downside to this is that you do have to do more work in post. So using either the phone app or the desktop app, generally with 360 footage, you have to tell it where you want it to be looking. For me personally, I actually find that process quite fun. It's an enjoyable process, reframing my shots, so it's not a huge burden for me. It might be annoying for you, depending on which part of the process you like. But Insta360 have also thought about this, and the X5 now comes with a couple of modes that help to minimize this post-editing work, including a mode that just automatically tracks you as the subject and will always keep you centered in the frame. So who is each camera for, and then which is my personal pick? I think if you're someone who does a lot of action-related stuff like sports, bike riding, skating, anything that you really just want to be focused in the moment and be able to capture great footage at the same time, I think the X5 is the obvious choice for you because of that fact that you just don't have to think about filming while you're filming. On the other hand, if you're someone who actually enjoys the process of framing your shots and being quite creative, then I think the Go Ultra could be the better choice. Because I think that really is the strength of the Ultra in general, is just the creative shots that you can get, especially with a camera that's this tiny of a form factor. You can just put it places that you just can't put any other type of camera. And if you really put some time and effort into it, you can get some really creative and interesting results. So that's kind of the main things I would think about if I was trying to decide between these two cameras. Apart from that, you can actually use them for a lot of the same things because they've got largely the same types of modes like star lapse, time lapse, all that kind of thing. I'd be comfortable using both for vlogging. It's also worth factoring in the size. So if you want something a bit more discreet, the Ultra is good. The X5 does stick out a little bit more and it's a little bit more obvious. But for me, if I had to personally choose between these two cameras, I would go for the X5. And I think that's because for me, it's the most generalist for my use case personally. I want an action camera that can help me film stuff like my skateboarding without having to focus, but that can also get me really great results when I do want to be a bit more intentional about getting things like time lapses or doing some simple vlogging. And also just really love the image quality on the X5. The 8K mode just looks amazing. I think it's really hard to beat. So which are you going to choose? Let me know in the comments. If you do want to help support the channel, I've got affiliate links to both cameras down below where you can actually get a freebie with each camera if you use my link. Otherwise, if you want to see the in-depth reviews that I've done on each of these two cameras, then check out this playlist right here where I've done a whole bunch of reviews on all sorts of different digital and tech products.